YouTube, the NBA playoffs are finally here, and as promised, I'm going to be doing a full bracket breakdown and prediction video here on the channel for you guys. We're going to be going through series by series, Western Conference to Eastern Conference, all the way up to the NBA Finals, predicting every single outcome for each and every series that we have in the playoffs. Now, I know you guys are going to say, hey, Dehave, you're cheating because the playoffs already started yesterday. I know. If you guys want to say I'm cheating, that's fine. Get your brackets out, though, folks. We're going to be doing some predictions. I want you guys to do this with me, so feedback is always appreciated. Make sure you guys let me know who you have in all these series and what you think I messed up on, because I'm going to mess up on a lot of things. I'm sure of it. I do it all the time. I'm going to try to remain as objective as possible throughout all my predictions. I'm going to try to move my 76ers bias out of the way and my anti-Boston Celtics bias out of the way. Let's get right into the predictions, folks. So like I said, with these predictions, we're going to be moving from west to east. So if you look at the map of all the NBA teams, geographically, we're going to be moving from left to right as you would when you're reading something. So we're going to start out with the Western Conference first round of the 2024 NBA playoffs. I'll probably put a bracket on screen and show a graphic for this. So we're going to start with the highest seeds to the lowest seeds, whatever. With all that out of the way, let's get into it. We're going to start with the Oklahoma City Thunder versus the New Orleans Pelicans, first round matchup in the Western Conference. And one thing to note about this series in particular is that Zion Williamson will most likely be missing the entirety of it, which is detrimental to the Pelicans, who are already at a talent deficit to begin with in this series. Just a clear gap between these two teams. Obviously, it's the one in the 8th seed or whatever. So I find an upset in the first round of this series to be extremely unlikely. So I'm going to be going with the Oklahoma City Thunder, probably in 5 or 6 games or so. I expect SGA and company to make quick work of the Pelicans without Zion Williamson. Would have been interesting to see if Zion was healthy, just how close this series could have been, because I do think the Pelicans would have been a real sleeper dark horse team in the West if Zion is healthy. So I'd be much more willing to consider an upset in that regard. But Oklahoma City advance, I'm going to say, in 5 games to the Western Conference semis. Moving all the way down to the bottom of the bracket, we're going to have the reigning champion Denver Nuggets, who are the 2 seed against the Los Angeles Lakers. And if you guys watched the game last night, like I said, I am cheating at this point because first day of the playoffs is already over. So I do have a tiny bit of insight to how these games are going. It's just one game for maybe 4 or 5 of the matchups, but it does play into it. The Lakers, I don't think anyone that's followed the NBA this season would give them a really great shot of beating Denver in a 7-game series. Even before last night, I was thinking it's either going to be a 5-game series and maybe the Lakers could push it to 6. I think you do have to be encouraged if you're a Lakers fan, if you saw last night's game and you saw that the Nuggets were human, and they still did end up coming back from that massive lead that the Lakers had and just totally clearing them in the second half. So I do think Denver is more beatable this year compared to last because of the depth issues that I mentioned in my video about them, where you lose guys like Bruce Brown and Jeff Green and these key role players, and you have a really short rotation and the back end of it isn't so great. So there could be some issues there, but I don't foresee them happening in this series. I expect the Denver Nuggets to move on to the West semis in 5 games against the LA Lakers, sending LeBron, AD, and company back to LA, where Brown's going to have some decisions to make. Nuggets advance. Now, moving on back to the top of the bracket, in the Thunder side of things, we have the 4 and 5 seed matchup between the Los Angeles Clippers and the Dallas Mavericks. And this is one of the more unpredictable series for me personally, because Kawhi Leonard's health is going to be the biggest factor in all of this. At the time of me recording this video, which is 9:31 a.m. on Sunday, which is supposed to be the first game between the Dallas Mavericks and the Los Angeles Clippers for their series, Kawhi Leonard is still listed as questionable at a game time decision with that knee injury that kept him out of the last few games of the regular season. That is the biggest factor in this series, in my opinion, biggest X factor. If Kawhi Leonard plays, I still think the Mavericks win this series, which would be the first upset of this bracket for me. But it will be a really, really good series if he does play, because Kawhi is playing some of the most efficient offensive basketball of his career this season. And while I do think the Clippers have a ton of issues, primarily depth and defensive versatility, I do think the Mavericks have some issues too, but I do think they're just the better team. And you know what, also, they have that number 77 guy, probably going to be in MVP consideration, best offensive player I've ever seen. I like the Mavericks to come out of this series in 6 games, regardless of Kawhi Leonard's health. If Kawhi Leonard's out, I expect it to be 5 games, because James Harden is an absolute fraud. Okay, I said my Sixers bias wasn't going to get to me, but it did, just for that moment. Hopefully no outbursts throughout the rest of the video, but I can't make any promises. Either way, I have the Mavs winning this series and upsetting the Los Angeles Clippers. Regardless of Kawhi's injury, they advance. The Mavericks advance to the West semis and will play the Oklahoma City Thunder in round 2 of the NBA playoffs. Now, for the final series of the first round of the Western Conference, I have between the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Phoenix Suns. No upsets here. I personally have the Minnesota Timberwolves coming out of this series pretty handedly. And like I said, even before the cheating allegations for me of, watching the first game of the playoffs and seeing how this goes and then making my predictions, I still would have picked the Minnesota Timberwolves in 5 games, because I just don't believe in the Phoenix Suns. They are loaded with top-end talent, 3 stars stars, 2 superstars total. Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, obviously 2 of the most premier players in the entire NBA offensively. You throw in Bradley Beal, who is exceptional at on-ball shot creation and offense in general. The Phoenix Suns are just a really bad team defensively to me, and the Minnesota Timberwolves, in stark contrast, are the best team in the NBA defensively to me, and they have plenty of offense to be able to supplement that and take out a team like the Phoenix Suns, who are extremely unbalanced as a team. Like I said with the Thunder, I expect Minnesota to make quick work of the Phoenix Suns and send them home in 5 games. And that's going to do it for the first round of the Western Conference playoffs. So just a quick recap, we have Oklahoma City Thunder beating the Pelicans, and they will take on the Dallas Mavericks in the West semis, who beat the Clippers. And then at the bottom half of the bracket, we have the Minnesota Timberwolves defeating the Phoenix Suns and taking on the Denver Nuggets in the West semis, who will pretty handedly beat the LA Lakers. So those are the West semis matchups. Let's move on to the right side of the bracket, and that's going to be the Eastern Conference. Round 1 of the Eastern Conference, let's get into it. So for the top matchup, we have the Boston Celtics against the Miami Heat. Similar to the 1st seed, 8th seed in the West, we actually have the Miami Heat having their best player out for what is likely going to be the entire series of this Boston Celtics Miami Heat matchup, and that is Jimmy Butler spraining his right MCL, I believe. So he'll be out for this entire series, I would predict, and that makes for a pretty easy landslide victory for the Celtics, in my opinion, the best team in the entire NBA, and they could even sweep the Miami Heat. I expect the Heat to steal 1 or 2 because they're just, you know, it's Miami Heat culture. It's gonna be a dogfight in some of those matchups, but I do expect Boston to come out of that series pretty favorably. A lot of those games will probably be blowouts, and like I said, maybe the Miami Heat could steal 1 or 2, but Boston Celtics advance to the East semis. This is a painful one. This one's gonna really hurt to say. We have the New York Knicks versus the Philadelphia 76ers, and unfortunately I have to be unbiased for this video. As you can see, I'm very happy about it. I'm showing a lot of emotion right now, and I'm super passionate about what I'm about to say. I'm totally in favor of it, not depressed about it, nothing. I love that I have to predict outcomes favorably in objective truth and facts and not let my fandom get in the way of my predictions. I love it. And with that being said, I have the New York Knicks defeating the Philadelphia 76ers in 6 or 7 games. It'll be a really tough series for both teams. Joel Embiid's knee is the biggest factor in this series for me, and that's why I have the New York Knicks coming ahead on top. If you watched the game the other night, everything went correctly for the Knicks, which is obviously a variable in the series, but Joel Embiid's knee continues to be a problem, and at one point during the game, it looked like his season might have been over right then and there, leaving for the locker room and coming back playing the second half, but clearly not the same player that we all know and love. And without him at his peak form, and without him with consistent, reliable legs, the New York Knicks will advance to the West semis, because without Joel Embiid at his best, the Sixers just aren't built to beat a team like the Knicks. I expect the Knicks to win in about 6 or 7 games. Like I said, it still will be a tough series, but Joel's knee just doesn't look good, and I can't predict a team without its best player at 100% that's super heavily built around him and not built to sustain a couple games here and there without him. Without Joel Embiid, this team is a bottom of the conference type of team. That's just the way it's built, but with Joel, there's a real shot at legit finals run. It's super deep, it's super stacked to supplement Joel's talent, but I'm not even sure Joel's going to make it through all of these games without being shut down, so I have the Knicks coming out on top. I'm going to say 7 games, and as you can see, I have very high energy, and I'm super hype about this situation that I had to predict for this video. I know, you guys can let me know down in the comments how awesome I am for being objective and non-biased during this pick, because even before the series started, I still would have predicted the Knicks, but only slightly, like I said. Either way, I'm a happy guy right now, and I really love the fact that I have to say all these things. Knicks in 7. Moving on to the bottom half of the Eastern Conference, we have the Milwaukee Bucks versus the Indiana Pacers, and upset alert, folks. Doc Rivers is on the loose, and he's going to do some Doc Rivers things, do what he does best, and blow leads. Giannis is out for what appears to be the first half of this series or so maybe Giannis misses like 3 games. Indiana's a slept-on team right now. They're being super disrespected, in my opinion, by a lot of these media outlets and stuff like that, so I think Indiana is a real legit threat to the Milwaukee Bucks, and the way the Milwaukee Bucks have been playing lately is just awful. They're kind of a mess right now, and there clearly seems to be some chemistry issues, perimeter defense issues, and like I said, there's a theme throughout this video, which is very unfortunate. Best player for the Milwaukee Bucks is going to have an injury concern for this series and likely miss at least half of the series, so I actually have the Indiana Pacers moving on to the second round West semis. I know that's crazy to say because Milwaukee on paper is one of the more talented rosters in the league and has premier talent. Like I said, Damian Lillard and Giannis Antetokounmpo supplement that with great front court presence in Brook Lopez, and Chris Middleton seems to be playing much better and is getting closer to where we would expect from him in previous seasons. As we know, that injury to the knee really affected him, but he seems to be playing really good lately, so probably like 80% of what he used to be, so really encouraging. But I still have the Indiana Pacers coming away with the victory. I think Rick Carlisle and company are poised to make a run to the second round, and they're a young, hungry team, and I expect them to play like that and take advantage of the Bucks' issues and chemistry and send Doc Rivers back to ESPN. I'm trolling a lot, and I know that, but I actually do believe what I'm saying. I think the Indiana Pacers move on, and I don't want to make this joke because I don't want to be disrespectful to Bucks fans, because I know I totally am right now. But maybe I'll let you guys know with all those disclaimers what the joke is. Luckily, the Bucks won't fail again in the first round. They'll just take another step to success, because there is no failure in sports. I thought that was pretty funny. Maybe not. And to round out the first round of the Eastern Conference playoffs, we have the Orlando Magic versus the Cleveland Cavaliers. And the Orlando Magic have clear offensive issues, especially in the half-court setting and shot creation ability. They have a clear lack of shooting and spacing in their lineups. And the Cleveland Cavaliers have all of these things in abundance. Not to mention, the biggest thing with Orlando is their defense. They are second ranked in the entire NBA in defensive rating. But the Cleveland Cavaliers are no slouch defensively either. They're a really, really great defensive team with a lot of versatility. I expect the Cleveland Cavaliers to win this series with home court advantage as well. I'll say in 6 games. Cleveland Cavaliers in 6. They will advance to play the Indiana Pacers. Let's go through the recap or the first round matchups and who will be moving on to the East semis. And we'll get back to the Western Conference. So like I said, we have the Boston Celtics taking care of the Miami Heat in short order. They will move on to the East semis. No surprise there. And they will play the winner of the Cleveland Cavaliers Orlando Magic matchup, which will be, like I said, the Cleveland Cavaliers in about 6 games or so. So that matchup will be the Boston Celtics versus the Cleveland Cavaliers. Celtics will have home court. And then at the bottom half of the bracket, we have the New York Knicks advancing to the East semis, beating my Philadelphia 76ers in 7 games, which, as you guys can see, I'm thrilled about. I love it. It's great. And then we have the Milwaukee Bucks choking to the Indiana Pacers in the first round, where the Pacers will take an added step to success, defeating the Milwaukee Bucks, and take on the New York Knicks in the second round of the playoffs. Celtics, Cavs, Pacers, 76ers, Pacers, Knicks. Sorry, made a mistake there. Have I hammered that joke into the ground enough? I think I have. All right, let's move on. Going back to the Western Conference, we have the West semis. Now, Oklahoma City Thunder versus the Dallas Mavericks. What a series this is going to be. We have 2 25-year-old guards that have been carrying their teams all season and put themselves through their stellar play into the MVP discussions for the 2024 season in Luka Doncic and SGA. Who will come out of this series on top? I expect this one to go the distance, 7 games. And like I said, OKC is going to have home court. That is a really, really tough place to play. OKC gets rowdy. Their fans are amazing. And that place gets loud. But as we know, Luka, maybe better than anyone, has the ability to silence a crowd in a hurry, and I expect him to do that. And I think the Dallas Mavericks will go on to defeat the Oklahoma City Thunder in 7 games and moving on to the Western Conference Finals for the first time since 2022, where they would lose to Golden State. This time Luka has the help. Will it be enough? Find out in the next episode of Basketball Z. Shout out to DJ Michi. That's an awesome meme. No, the Dallas Mavericks, I do expect to win this series. It's going to be really, really close. I love this series. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I think Mavs in 7 move on to the Western Conference Finals. And then Minnesota Timberwolves versus the Denver Nuggets. Another awesome matchup and series this is going to be. I expect the Nuggets to advance and beat Minnesota in about 6 games. I do think it's going to be a little bit closer than people think, because Minnesota is a lot slept on, like I said, similar to the Thunder and the Pacers. They're not getting their respect because they're young and maybe a little bit less experienced than some of these other teams. They're not flashing. They play in small markets, but listen, man, we saw another team like that last season with the Denver Nuggets. You know, all it takes is one great run. And I know I'm saying all this just to, predict that the Timberwolves will lose, but I do think there's a real chance that they could beat a team like Denver. They're that good, especially defensively. They have one of the better matchups against Jokic in the league. They're going to throw a lot at him with who I think should be the DPOY, Rudy Gobert. And then you have like Naz Reid and a lot of big bodies to throw at Jokic. So I think it's going to be interesting, but I do think the Denver Nuggets are just, cream of the crop in the NBA. They'll just advance to the Western Conference Finals, and it'll be a Luka Jokic matchup in the West, which we will discuss in just a minute. But first, back to the East. East semis, we have the Boston Celtics versus the Cleveland Cavaliers. And I actually think of all the teams in the Eastern Conference, right, matchup wise, Cleveland Cavaliers might be one of the better ones on paper versus the Boston Celtics, because the Celtics have a lot of size and positional versatility defensively and offensively. They could get to the rim and pose a lot of issues for you in the paint with their athleticism and versatility and transition and stuff like that. They're just all around such a dominant team on every aspect of the game right now. And matchup wise, they're a nightmare. But I do think the matchups are really, really good for Cleveland as opposed to some of these other East teams. Like, the paint's going to be a problem to get into and score in efficiently if you're Tatum and Brown and these other guys against a team like Cleveland with Evan Mobley and Jared Allen back there. So a lot of those times these guys play together on the floor for long stretches of the game. This could be a tough paint to get into, like I said, and it's going to be a tough matchup for them. And you got like really good scoring and shooting from the outside if you're Cleveland. You have a lot of playmaking. I think, they're one of the better teams just on paper and matchup wise and physically to be able to at least pose an issue for Boston and make it a little tough on them in certain aspects. I do think they have some consistency issues, particularly from Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell at times. And I think think that's going to hold them back quite a bit. If I knew that they were both going to be at their best every single game and not have a bad shooting night, I might even predict the Cavs to make it like 7 games and give, Boston maybe one of the best series of their playoff run. The problem is the way the Cavs are built right now, if those guys don't absolutely go crazy on offense, you're going to have a really tough time because that's, they generate all the offense. So either way you look at it, I think Boston comes out on top. I do think it could be an interesting series with the matchups. Like I said, I expect Boston to come out in 6, and that's being generous to Cleveland. Boston advances to the East Finals. Like I said, shocker, I know. And for the final matchup for the second round semifinals for both conferences, we have the Indiana Pacers versus the New York Knicks. And like I said about the Pacers, I do think they're a little bit slept on and disrespected, but the Knicks are more built for a situation like this. And I just think pound for pound, they're a little bit more ready for a series like this roster wise. And I love what the Pacers have done with their roster. Tyrese Haliburton and Pascal Siakam are awesome players, and hopefully you can keep Pascal around if you're Indiana. But I think the Knicks have a lot more grit and edge, and they're going to be able to slow the Pacers down to control the tempo. And if the Pacers aren't playing the way they want to at the rhythm they want to offensively, they kind of lose the thing that got them there, right? It's the offense, it's the pace they play with, it's the pace and space, it's the transition, it's all that stuff, right? So if they lose that and the New York Knicks are effectively able to slow them down, which I expect them to be, Tom Thibodeau is a really good defensive strategist. I think the Knicks come out of this series in about 6 games. I do think it'll be a close series, but I have the Knicks winning. And moving on to the Eastern Conference Finals, where they will play the dreaded Boston Celtics. Let's go back to the West and get into those West Finals predictions. All right, folks, here we are. 3 series left. Who's going to win? I'd like you guys to give me a prediction down in the comments. Who do you think wins out of these 4 teams and advances to the finals and wins the finals out of these 4 teams? Let me know down in the comment section before I predict it. Let's get into the West Finals matchup. So this is going to be one of the greatest playoff series, instant classic, right? In the West Finals, we're going to have Denver Nuggets and Dallas Mavericks, the 2 greatest offensive players maybe in this generation. Like, these guys are just perfectly complete offensive players, Jokic and Luka, with supporting cast members that are also amazing league-wide and worldwide offensive talents, Jamal Murray and Kyrie Irving. Just the display of offense is going to be so historic in this playoff series if this actually happens, and I really want it to happen because it'll be the best thing you'll ever get to see. Just beautiful basketball, right? But all that being said, I think Luka has help, but I don't think he has the amount of help he needs to get past the Denver. I don't think the Mavs roster is as fleshed out as Denver's and as cohesive as Denver's, and despite what Luka is able to do and activate God mode whenever he wants, it's just not going to be enough, because at the end of the day, Denver has a god of their own offensively, and they have the perfect pieces to complement him and the best system possible to be able to ensure that that happens consistently in every game, quarter to quarter, minute to minute, possession by possession. Denver Nuggets come out of this series in 7 games. Luka and Kyrie do everything they can, but Dallas's role players and cohesion and system basketball just get the best of them, and it happens to everyone, happens to the best, and it'll happen to Luka too. Denver Nuggets, the reigning NBA champions, move on to the NBA Finals once again in 2024 to reclaim their title and try to be the first team to repeat an NBA final since the 2017-2018 Golden State Warriors. Let's move on to the right side of the map again, the Eastern Conference Finals between the Boston Celtics and the New York Knicks. I will say, if you're the Boston Celtics, the Knicks are probably one of the best matchups you could possibly face, and I'm not even trolling. I think that's a real possibility, because think about the matchups between the Celtics and the Knicks, especially without Julius Randle active on the floor. The only problem you would have as the Boston Celtics is the size in the paint. The Knicks rotate 2 legit 7-foot guys that are legit inside dominant forces on the offensive glass, the defensive glass, on the interior in general. Those guys clear space, and those guys play big, right? And they play physical and they play tough. The Boston Celtics have some issues with that kind of stuff. They have Al Horford and Kristaps Porzingis, but neither of those guys really fit what I'm describing with the Knicks 2 centers in Mitchell Robinson and Isaiah Hartenstein. So that could be an issue for sure. But think about the Knicks' best player and driving engine of their team, Jalen Brunson. Who better to guard Jalen Brunson in a 7-game series than Drew Holiday? That is the worst guy you want to be guarded by if you're Jalen Brunson. The Celtics throw so many things at you. They're so switchable. You could get Jason Tatum on him. You could get Jalen Brown on him. You could get Drew Holiday on him, which is literally why he's in Boston. Part of the biggest reason to stop a Jalen Brunson or slow down a Jalen Brunson type player for a 7-game series, right? Now you could say, okay, well, I have a chess piece too, and that's OG Anunoby, and I could put him on the hot hand between Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum, right? Maybe we can't double these guys because there's so much shooting and talent on the floor next to them, but I could sure as heck give them one of the tougher matchups they can face across the NBA in OG Anunoby. Okay, sure. But is that really enough? Like, is, slowing down one of those guys really enough to beat a Boston Celtics team without your second best player on the roster? Like, I'm just saying, I think the Celtics win this series in 5 games, and I'm not even trying to be disrespectful because the Knicks are going to beat the Sixers. I'm actually serious with this one. I think the Celtics will beat the Knicks in probably probably 5 games if this is the series. I know the Garden is a tough place to play, and I know the Knicks are a little bit more gritty than the Celtics maybe, but listen, man, all the grit in the world can't get you past the most talented roster in basketball. I got the Celtics moving to the NBA Finals, where they will face the reigning champ Denver Nuggets, try to win their first NBA Finals since 2008 when Doc Rivers was their coach. That's insane to say. It doesn't even sound real at this point. It sounds like a dream I had or something. The moment we've all been waiting for, the NBA Finals, and I think we all can see the trajectory of this season and maybe the potential outcome that I predicted, where all of these, balancing things up in the air, a lot of interesting things throughout the playoffs, and a lot of potential, upset opportunities and stuff like that. But if we're being realistic and we're predicting where this will lead to, it'll probably, for most NBA fans, lead to Celtics Nuggets in the 2024 NBA Finals. Let's talk about it. So this is one of the better matchups in the last few years in the finals. I think these are two elite all-time versatile teams, right? The Celtics, with their roster, they are just one of the more versatile teams I've ever seen in the NBA, one of the more complete teams on paper that you could find across the last decade or so. It's just, top to bottom, what they have skill set wise and ability wise, how they can beat you in a million different ways, night in and night out. It's just insane. I think they lack a little bit of urgency and consistency, as we've seen throughout the playoffs the last few years. Tatum's inconsistencies, will that be different this year? I do think so. I do think he's looked more consistent and more of a leader on that team as opposed to previous years where, maybe he would delegate that to Marcus Smart or Al Horford or Jaylen Brown and defer to him sometimes in these big situations. But I don't see that. I see kind of a different Tatum this year, if I'm being honest with you guys. And I think that has really galvanized the team around him. Obviously, they made some massive roster moves that have worked out in their favor. Drew Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis, stuff like that. But they just have a million ways to beat you. I think that's going to give the Denver Nuggets a ton of issues. Like I said before, the biggest issue I would have with the Nuggets is their depth and their lack of, size on the bench, right? Like they're going to run an 8-man rotation for sure. It's going to be like Reggie Jackson, Christian Brown, and Peyton Watson, and probably maybe some other guys they'll sneak in like DeAndre Jordan at times. But, I know the Celtics have a little bit of bench, second unit issues too, but I think their players and versatility are still better, right? My point is, like, I've talked about this before, but Jokic is going to be Jokic, right? Like he's, no matter what, he's going to go for all-time great efficiency and massive, triple-double like production. He's the best player in the world, and you expect that from him every night because he will be that every night. But I think the Celtics just throw too much at you. Like I just don't even know if the best player in the world is able to withstand that with the just barrage of firepower the Boston Celtics have on both ends of the floor. Like it's just it's relentless. Like at any point in the game, they could just go on a 20-0 run because they're just so incredibly versatile and talented on every aspect of the floor. Shooting, matchups, size, defensive versatility, switchability, interior defense, perimeter defense, athleticism, transition offense, half-court offense, shot creation, rebounding, rim protect. Like they're just, every phase of the game, they're just as good or better than anyone, right? The Denver Nuggets are gonna have a lot of issues with that, man. Like I said, if KCP, Michael Porter Jr., who I know has been pretty inconsistent at times throughout the season, and it varies night to night where, how his shot will be going in. KCP, MPJ, and, Aaron Gordon are all gonna have to really be as consistent as they've ever been in the playoffs offensively, right? And that goes for Reggie Jackson and Christian Brown too, because when you play with Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray, and that pick and roll game is the most unstoppable thing in this entire league between the two of them. When you play with those guys, you better be ready to get some really open catch and shoot threes. And if they're not going in, if these guys have a bad shooting night, I've talked about this before, I know, but if those three guys, Gordon, MPJ, KCP, if they have a tough shooting night, the Nuggets just probably lose against a team like the Boston Celtics, because the Boston Celtics just have so much to be able to make up for if one guy has a bad shooting night, everyone else just fills in. There's just so much offensive firepower spread throughout the roster. When you rely on one player or 3 role players or 4 role players as much as you do, there's going to be a night where MPJ shoots 2 of 11 from the field and gives you 7 points. Who's going to step up and fill in for that? It can't be Jokic or Murray. Maybe it will be, but my point is, expecting more than best player in the world production from Jokic. We're expecting him to be God. We're expecting him to be better than the best player in the world and produce more than the best player in the world would to make up for a bad shooting night from some other guys. That is unsustainable. Boston Celtics in 7. I actually believe these things. I don't want the Celtics to win. In fact, I hate the Celtics, maybe even more than any other team in any sport, right? I'm a huge football fan as well. I hate the Dallas Cowboys. I'm an Eagles fan. I hate the Boston Celtics more than maybe any team I've ever hated, right? They're just better than everyone. I'm sorry. Like, I don't know if that's controversial, and I don't know if people believe in them yet, but I'm telling you, I've seen it. And every time the Sixers play them, every time I watch them quite a bit, they strike the fear into me that the best team on the the planet would, right? And they are just the best team on the planet, and I expect them to play like that throughout the entirety of the playoffs this season. For the first time in the Tatum era, there will be much more consistency from him individually, and even if there's not, they're just better anyway, because there's just so much they can throw at you, like I said, and they're more versatile. Celtics win in the finals. As you can see, I'm super happy about it. I'm not going to do the joke thing like I did before. I beat it into the ground. I get it. Let me know down in the comment section what you think of my predictions. Drop a like on the video if you guys did enjoy it. I would really appreciate it. This is a lot of fun to do. I love this. You know, I just love basketball, folks. I'm getting hype again. Can't wait to watch the playoffs. Hopefully I'm wrong about like a lot of these predictions, especially the Sixers one, because that would be sick if I was wrong about that. Let me stop trolling and get to the outro. Make sure you guys drop a like on the video if you guys did enjoy it, like I said. Let me know down in the comment section what you guys think, because I actually want to know what your predictions are. I always like gauging the comments, because sometimes I think maybe my opinions are like super off, and maybe I'm like reading too much into things or not. So that's why feedback is so helpful to the channel. So even if, like I said, even if you criticize some of the points, that actually helps me a lot. Just all I ask is just don't be disrespectful about it, like name calling and stuff like that. Like that's just, you know, it's unnecessary, and it doesn't help anything. So if you want to help spread a piece of information that you have that maybe I don't, or someone else in the comments doesn't, please just do it with respect, because that's what we're, you know, going for. That's what helps. All I care about is basketball, and I'm so passionate about basketball, and I know you guys are too, and that's why I love the feedback. So it always makes, you know, means the world to me when people take the time out of their day to comment on the videos and stuff like that, and it just drop a like or subscribe. It just makes my day, and it really makes the channel a better place, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to build a great place for this NBA community, because this is the best community in the entire world, in my opinion. The NBA community is so great. It might get a little toxic at times. It's like a family, you know, but we get through it, and things change and whatever, but feedback's always important. Like I said, I'm totally sure. In fact, I'm 100% sure I'm wrong about a lot of stuff in this video, so correct me if you think I am, because I definitely need it, like I said. So it actually helps me. Thank you guys for all the support lately. It really means a lot to me. I really, the humbling experience when, like I said, I read comments, and positive or negative, it means a lot to me. Anyway, drop a like on the video if you guys enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. We're gonna be uploading every day throughout the playoffs, so I don't want you guys to miss any content just like this. We're gonna be doing playoff updates, news, stuff like that throughout the playoffs, so make sure you guys subscribe, and hopefully you guys have a fantastic rest of your day today, and hopefully your favorite team wins their next playoff game. And if your favorite team isn't in the playoffs, hopefully they make it next year. I will catch you guys in the next video. This is your boy D-Haven. As always, peace.